The fact that we still have virus restrictions is crazy, at least when it comes to half the country. The damage that these states are doing with their totally over-the-top fear that people might get this virus just by going down to the shops or a cafe. Consider this, in Tasmania, not one person since April the 17th has caught the virus from someone out in the community rather than from, say, someone overseas or from a family member. Not one in more than a month. In Western Australia, nobody's caught the virus from someone out in the community since May 2. That's nearly 4 weeks ago. In Queensland, nobody's caught it just going down the street since May 6. In South Australia, nobody since May 12. In the Northern Territory, nobody at all has caught this virus from someone out in the community. Nobody. The chances of getting infected, if you go out in the streets of those states, is close to zero. Why then do they still keep such tough restrictions? Why is Labor still suggesting today that travel bans between states like Queensland should not maybe be lifted immediately?
We want to see the borders open when it's safe, when it's appropriate, and when the medical advice is consistent with that. I know that a lot of the mayors around Queensland have said publicly, and not just Labor mayors, have said that we need to have an abundance of caution here because an outbreak of the virus would be devastating for the state economy.
Abundance of caution is a nice way of saying panic. And what's really devastating the huge tourism industry, particularly in Queensland, is and will not be the virus. Jim Chalmers is wrong. It's the government bans that are causing all this. And these are bans that came largely from governments panicking. That panic explains the Morrison government's latest embarrassment, the big $60 billion mistake that Labor was today jumping on. And yes, wow, that mistake is a big one, $60 billion. For nearly 2 months, the government told us it had to spend $130 billion, all of it borrowed money, $130 billion to put 6 million Australians on a new JobKeeper subsidy to save their jobs.
A fortnightly payment of $1,500 with some 6 million Australian workers expected to receive it.
Turns out that was yet another wild exaggeration, another dud prediction. The real number of workers needing the subsidy is not 6 million, but 3.5 million. The real cost of this scheme is not $130 billion, but $70 billion. The Treasurer today blamed the Treasury Department.
Well, the forecast for the number of people who were to be covered by the JobKeeper program at 6.5 million and the cost at $130 billion was undertaken by Treasury in the midst of the pandemic. We announced the program on the 30th of March, and in the week leading up we saw the number of cases increasing in Australia of coronavirus by 22% in a single day.
And it's true, things did look grim there for a while. We were dealing with something unknown, but Treasury put too much trust in what was already then clearly dud modelling, as I was saying in this show. And they weren't alone, unfortunately. The Morrison government, which should have called them out, well, it listened to its top health advisors who were claiming this virus would kill between 50,000 and 150,000 of us. The Medical Journal of Australia claimed we'd run out of intensive care beds by April 5. And the Prime Minister, relying on the same dud modelling, claimed the tough stay-home bans had to last at least 6 months.
I've said it's at least 6 months. It could be longer.
Panicked, our politicians spent millions building pop-up hospitals that will never treat a single patient. They banned elective surgery and spent millions to create thousands and thousands more hospital beds and ventilators we still don't need and didn't use.
Our second task is to boost the capacity of our hospitals to deal with this outbreak. A partnership between the Australian government, the states and the private hospitals that will bring over 30,000 beds within the hospital system.
Of those 30,000 beds, just 33 are used today by virus patients, about 1 in 1,000. Of the 7,500 ventilators our government's bought and borrowed, we only ever needed 30 or 40 of them. That dud modelling that scaremongering, that has cost this country billions and billions of dollars. It's destroyed hundreds of thousands of jobs. And now the Prime Minister is desperate to wind things back, get people back to work, even though many premiers who actually call the shots here are still in panic mode.
I'm not interested in ideology. I'm not interested in all those other things. I'm just interested in getting Australians back into jobs.
Now, Scott Morrison is right, and some premiers now need to get some guts and show some leadership here. Now, I get it. Mistakes were made initially because we didn't know what we were dealing with and got to be cautious. True, that's totally forgivable. But what is the excuse now for some of these bans?